Welcome, everybody, once again to this week. And what a week it has been. It's the live stream. It's great to be back here again. Um, for this weekend, we got we've only got like maybe one more weekend before the big day, Halloween, or we got 2 weekends. I think how 31st is on a Monday this year. So that will be interesting. Who knows? Maybe I'll even come a little bit dressed up on the live stream here just before it. Now, I am going to, I think it's on the 26th. That's the night of the Danter Banter. We're doing that. We're doing the Tim Danter show all dressed up. So there will be some costuming there. Now, mind you, I might wear the exact same costume for both events because I'm not quite that ambitious to go out and buy 2 costumes this year. So we'll have to see how that all works out. Anyway, it is fantastic. Once again, just to see you guys here, just to see that the show is going. So as I know people are still filing in, we'll start with a quick news article. And I know we sort of started talking a little bit about Halloween. So here's an interesting thing. Did you know that Halloween has the second highest amount of consumer spending in the United States? And that, of course, would apply to Canada as well. Now, first is Christmas, of course, but the Halloween comes in at number 2. They're actually estimating south of the border $10.5 billion coming into the economy due to people buying treats and decorations and costumes. I mean, there's a lot of Halloween decorations. This year, we actually did buy a little Halloween tree. It's not like a big like a Christmas tree. It's just a little tiny willow thing. You put batteries in it. Has creepy orange, branches that you can bend. So it's a pretty simple thing, but I do like it. So that's kind of the whole thing with Halloween. Oh, that was kind of neat. I just said Halloween and I heard a door creak off in the distance. I think it was the cat pushing against the door, causing it to creak. So no need to call the Ghostbusters. Of course. Now, when we were talking about news this week, one of the biggest news articles of the week, of course, was our CPI. Not our CPI, but the U.S. CPI. So the Consumer Price Index. Now, we got a preview of that with the PPI, which came out just beforehand. Now, the PPI, it rose 0.4%. I think they were looking at it, they were expecting it to go up about 0.2%. So it was kind of scary because it shows us with the producer's price index. That's more of the wholesale stuff. And where things are getting more expensive there, we know that's coming our way on the retail side. So let's take a look and see what happened with the CPI, because that came right after it. So the CPI was a disaster in the US. So regular CPI, it came in at 8.2%, which is pretty high. It's not as high as it has been. I think it was 8.4 a few months ago. But the fact is they were expecting it to come down with all of these rate hikes and all of the fight against inflation. They're looking for results. So they were actually expecting the increase to only be 0.2%, but it was a 0.4% increase. So that in itself is an indication that inflation hasn't yet peaked in the U.S. It's still really strong. And when you look at and you strip away like oil, you strip away oil and groceries, basically the most expensive stuff. Then we get our core CPI. Now our core CPI, it came in at 6.6, and that was a 0.6% increase. They were expecting a 0.4. So right across the board, everything with the CPI came in higher than it should have, indicating that inflation is pretty strong still in the U.S., as a lot of us in this community kind of suspected that anyway. So with that stronger CPI, that means the next rate hike is going to more than likely be a 75 basis point hike. So we're looking at interest rates continue to go up. And here's that danger. The more we push those interest rates up, the closer we are to finally declaring a recession, because that's what's happening. And inflation itself is going absolutely crazy. It's getting up. It's going higher and higher. there's kind of no end in sight right now. And we're going to talk a little bit more. I've got some more stuff on inflation as we get a little bit further. I'll just say hi to a couple of folks. Hello, Jill. And she did confirm that it was Blaze. And Hockey Nut is in the house. Hello, Hockey Nut. Hopefully your teams are doing well, because I think the NHL season just started. So we got that going. At least as Canadians, we always have hockey to fall back on in hard times, which is kind of good. Now, one other little story. We'll move away from the CPI for the moment. Of course, our good buddy Elon Musk is back in the news again lately. We used to have that regular feature, what in the banana bread's going on with Elon? Well, we got a few different things. Now he's kind of sticking his nose into the Ukraine-Russia conflict, which is kind of interesting. He has said that he's actually threatened to remove Starlink access to Ukraine. He wants, I don't know if he's trying to get money out of them, but he did talk about the government should pay him for that. And there's been some other rumors too that he's now on some hit lists or something of some sort. And I'm kind of like, that's Elon. I don't care. We're not going there. So Elon's a little bit strange. Now, we've also know Elon is now in that position where he's going to be buying Twitter again. So that's back on the table. Nobody really knows yet what his plans are with Twitter. So we kind of got that going, and that's going to be really interesting. Hey, Dave, great to see ya. And my shares are down too. Yeah, there was a lot of red in the market this week. I mean, when the CPI came out, I mean, there was a massive dump. And it came across the board, and it wasn't even just the S&P 500. It was also oil too, because I was playing oil at the time, and I was just like, holy banana bread. This is not a good dump, but it's been one of those weeks. It's been a rough week. If you're an oil and commodity trader, you didn't have a great week, and the rest of the market as well. But if you're DCAing into stuff, you probably had a fantastic week. You probably had some really good sales on some really good stocks. So that's kind of an interesting thing to sort of put it together. All right, let's talk about something completely different here for a moment. Just because I don't have too much more on Elon. I want to talk a little bit about New Zealand. Now, if you remember, there was talk in Canada about that whole fertilizer tax because, they were talking about, fertilizer is creating too much nitrogen in the air and creating greenhouse gases. And so they wanted to put taxes on the amount of on the amount of fertilizer you were using. Well, they've taken it to a different place in New Zealand. New Zealand is going to introduce a cow tax. Now, what is a cow tax, you may ask? Well, over in New Zealand, they've got about 10 million cows. So that's a lot of cows. Each of these cows produces about 220 pounds of methane per year. So they want to create, all under the climate change banner, a cow tax. So that way they can sort of, number one, maybe reduce the number of cows they have, because people will be like, oh, well, if I got to pay tax on these cows and tax on that methane they're producing, maybe I won't have as many cows. It's hard to say. I don't know yet how exactly that tax is going to come about. But when I heard it, I was just like, that's the oddest thing I've ever heard, like taxing cows. Obviously, the farmers who own the cows will be the ones that actually, pay the taxes on those. The good old ozone issue. And it's not even ozone, really, Hockey Nut. This is all straight about climate change, because methane is actually a more potent greenhouse gas than carbon dioxide. So that's one of the reasons that they're trying to sort of say, there's a lot of people that are like, okay, we should all be vegetarian, don't eat any beef. We don't need the cows because they produce too much methane. But I mean, if you stop eating meat, the cows are going to produce more methane, aren't they? Because they're still going to be around. I mean, maybe after a while, we may not breed as many cows, but still. I think that's going to be a hard sell. I think you're going to see a lot of pushback in New Zealand with some of these farmers because, those cows are their livelihood. And we're in a situation where there's so many issues in the world, especially when it comes to food shortages and things like that. You don't want to be fiddling and throwing taxes on things that are producing food. Same thing goes with, the fertilizer in Canada. We don't want to be adding this tax. It's a bad move, in my opinion. So those are the cow tax. So that's going to be an interesting thing. Another interesting thing is this week, Netflix has rolled out their new ad-filled service. So this service comes in at $5.99 a month. So it's a subscription service, but you have to watch some ads. Now, I don't yet know how many ads you have to watch and how that's going to look. But if this is something that does bring back some viewers, this could be good for their finances of Netflix. Maybe their stock can start to recover a little bit because they have taken quite a hit. Now, here's my question to you guys. How would you prefer to watch these ads? Because I would be, if I wanted to reduce service, so if I wanted to pay a little bit less, I'd be willing to watch maybe one ad at the beginning of the show. I don't want ads in the middle, but at the beginning, I'd be okay with that. So that's just a question for you guys, whether or not you think that would be something you'd be willing to have. Do you want ads in the middle? Now, if they said, we'll give you Netflix for free, but you're going to get the same amount of ads as you get on TV, would you be okay with that? Would you be game for that? Personally, I don't think so, especially if they're because they'd be non-skippable, obviously, because they want to be able to get it. So it'd be a little bit different, like YouTube. Like YouTube here, you can usually skip the ads, although when you do skip the ads, that poor YouTuber doesn't get paid. So I'm just putting that out there. But yet, here's that thing. I mean, if I go to a YouTuber and I want to support them and I get a 20-minute ad, I'm skipping it. No, I'm sorry. I'm not going to sit through a 20-minute ad. But, I don't mind sitting through a couple small ones because I'm usually multitasking. I got so many, I've got extra monitors and things. So that's kind of cool. But how many ads would be too many ads for you guys? That's what I want to know. How many is too many? All right. Now, while you guys are thinking about that, another interesting thing came out about children. Do you guys know how much it costs in Canadian? We'll do this in Canadian. How much do you think it costs to raise a child from being born to 18? So their entire lifetime from 0 to 18. How much do you think that's going to cost? How much do you think that'll cost you Canadian? So put your guesses in the chat, folks, because I want to see if somebody can guess it. And you guys can guess multiple ones. Like I'll even look, you know what? The first guess, I'll tell you if it's higher or lower. 120K. It is higher than that, Hockey Nut. Higher. So keep that in mind. Think about just the amount of food that child eats their whole life. Clothes, school supplies, sports, all of those things. All right, Jill says 250K. It is higher than 250K. So, at least you guys are moving in the right direction. So, there's all kinds of different things. Dental care, although that's going to eventually disappear because, that new bill. But it's higher than 250. Let's see something else. Come on, throw me a guess, guys. Let's see I want to see if somebody can get close to it. And I'll tell you, 250 is pretty small compared to the number that I'm looking for here. So it is a higher number. All right. Now I'm going to come back to that once I see some. While I'm waiting, wait a minute. Change to spare, 500K. You are less than 100. With 500K, it's lower than that. It's, that's close enough. I'm impressed with the 500K. So the actual answer is 431K. And Hockey Nut came in at 400. So he was a little bit closer. But $431,000 to raise a child from 0 to 18. So that's a huge investment. I mean, imagine if you had 3 kids, you're looking at more than $1 million to raise those 3 kids, which, is kind of interesting. And look at this. And Steve here, this is absolutely proof of the pudding. I raised 4. It costs every cent you have. Yeah, kids are really expensive. Absolutely. So that's kind of an interesting thing. Tiny little bit about immigration. So one of the things we currently have in Canada is we have an immigration backlog. So when somebody immigrates to the country, and we want people to immigrate, we've been looking at trying to get more professionals in here to help with some of the labor shortages. Recently, they had lessened some of the requirements to make it a lot easier for professionals to immigrate to Canada. Fantastic. The only problem is all of the backlogged paperwork is now at a point that some of these people are basically at the point of almost being deported. And these are people we need. They're filling major roles. We can't afford to have these people deported. And the backlog is sort of threatening as well. A lot of our immigration goals, because they want to have, I think it's by 2023, by the end of 2023, they want to have something like 1.2 million people emigrated in. It's pretty big. So they need to get these backlogs. And it goes beyond immigration. It also is, when you look at things like the passport office, a lot of different government facilities, they're just so far backlogged in so many things. It's absolutely crazy. Oh, I missed Brian. And here is Brian. Greetings. Hello, Brian. It is good to see you on this wonderful afternoon. So that's kind of a little bit on that immigration backlog. It's just one of those things to sort of keep in mind. And it's kind of interesting how bureaucracy can get so out of control. So that's kind of interesting. Canadian utilities. As you guys have probably, if you've been watching the channel for a while, I bring up Canadian utilities every so often because Canadian utilities is the only dividend king that we have in Canada. So a dividend king means that they have increased their dividends every year for 50 years in a row. And Canadian utilities have done that. Fortis is getting close. I think about another year, just around a year, and Fortis should be there as well. But here's the interesting thing. Canadian utilities, they had a deal this week with Suncor. And what they did is they actually purchased. So Canadian utilities bought the wind and solar assets from Suncor for $730 million. So why would Suncor, of course, sell those? And the reason for that is they're using that money that they sold these assets for to move more into development of hydrogen technologies. So, basically creating hydrogen. Hopefully they're looking at doing it green because that's the only hydrogen I think that's going to be of any real use. Because if you've got a gray or a blue hydrogen, those create a lot of extra climate change gases. So not carbon neutral. So we don't want to be doing those. And Dave D said a really good guy at work just got his PR last week. Nice. And more tax dollars for government. Is CU the ticker? Yes, it is. Canadian Utilities is CU. So they are a fantastic blue chip, very reliable stock. So definitely a favorite for sure. So yeah, because Suncor, like I said, they want to move into hydrogen and other renewable fuels. So that's kind of where they're going. So a little bit of a shuffle within the Canadian energy sector, but the energy sector has been booming. And I don't know. I've been very bullish on the Canadian energy sector for a long time. The American energy sector is also booming. I'll just put this into perspective. Tomorrow, my video coming out tomorrow is actually a battle royale, Canada versus the USA in the energy sector. So I got a neat little video coming out on that where we're going to basically take a large cap, a mid cap, and a small cap from both countries, and we're going to just sort of compete them against each other and see which country has the better energy sector when it comes to at least the 3 that we selected for that. So that'll be tomorrow in the video. So definitely check that out. That's going to be kind of cool. Little story about Canada Post. So interestingly enough, Canada Post has worked out a deal with TD Bank so that Canada Post can offer loans. So you can go to the post office to get a loan now. I think the maximum amount you can get is $1,000. But now you're probably thinking, well, what's the use of that? The use of that is that a lot of times people in communities don't have access to, to a loan sort of apparatus. So in very small rural places, they all have post offices, but they may not have a bank that they can get a loan from without traveling to a nearby city or something like that. So this offers an option for people to get loans that is not one of these money lenders who have outrageously high interest rates. You know which ones I'm talking about. The ones that kind of border on being loan sharks, like payday loans, those type of money marts, those. Whatever you guys do not ever use those payday loan people, because you're paying an incredible amount of interest and they're just basically milking you for everything you got. So yes, Canada Post is owned by the government, so they're not private. Yeah, and I mean, obviously the government's going to make a little bit of money. I don't know yet the way these loans are going to be structured. I don't know what type of interest rates we're looking at, but I'm thinking because they're backed by TD Bank, you're probably going to have very similar type things as you would have if you went to the bank. So I also imagine that they're also going to be a little bit as hard to get. If you have bad credit, you probably are not going to be able to grab one of these loans. But if you live, especially in a rural place, and you have good credit, and you just need a loan, but you don't want to travel, out to the middle of some big city nearby, this may be an option for you. But it's just interesting. It's kind of interesting to see how these things pull together, because Canada Post has been, in a way, Canada Post is not as relevant as they used to be. I mean, in the olden days, everybody used to get mail. Now, how often do you guys get mail? I very rarely ever get mail. I get the occasional thing. But if anything, Canada Post is now they've moved a lot more towards parcels, almost becoming a courier in their sense, because, well, that's the market that is going to stick around, and people are always ordering online. E-commerce is getting bigger and bigger, so that's more business for Canada Post in that way. Interestingly enough, funny little story, I actually was hired by Canada Post once. So one year I was hired to come in and be a mail sorter for the holiday season. I was so excited. I quit my job, got ready, put my hands together because they pay really, really well. And that was at the beginning of the internet. And all of a sudden that year, they weren't busy. That was the first year they weren't busy. And I didn't even get a single shift. I couldn't believe it. It was just, it's like, I quit one job to do this because of the money, and then I ended up with nothing. So very, very annoying. But at the time, Canada Post was just one of those things that if you could get your foot in the door, you could get yourself a really good government job that, was going to pay you half decent. But it never got there. I went through the training. That's it. I was ready, waiting, able, but I didn't get a thing. So that kind of sucks. You guys want to talk about a little bit of doom and gloom? So the International Monetary Fund, or the IMF, this week they came out with some reports that are not very nice reports. So they're predicting inflation peak, world inflation to peak about 8.8%. And they're thinking that'll happen this year. So that's the good thing. They do think that the inflation will peak this year. But they're also thinking that at least 1/3 of the economies in the world are going to hit those 2 negative GDP quarters. So that, of course, being, one of the definitions of a recession. So we're looking at some interesting things. And they also said that they're expecting steep declines in the American economy, the Chinese economy, and the European Union economy as well. So that's massive. That's a lot of the world. And they're saying 2023, if you think that it's been tough, if you think we've seen the worst of things, think again, because here comes 2023. 2023 is going to feel much like a recession, according to the IMF. So they're saying, buckle your seatbelts, get ready. It's going to be rough. Now, it could be, they could be right. The signs are there. There's definitely enough signs that you should be concerned, that you should be preparing for a recession just in case. And this is just simple things like having your emergency fund ready, making sure that, if your job ends up being one of the ones that disappears in the recession, that you've got some kind of a plan, whether it be through side hustles or you've just got that extra money that you can support yourself through it. So it's going to be really interesting to see how this goes. And Vic is in the house. Hey, Vic, it's great to see you. You made it to the live show. Fantastic. So yeah, the IMF, it's scary. I mean, it feels like fear-mongering when they talk about it this way, but here's the reality. If you're always prepared for the worst case scenario, then no matter what, you're going to be okay. Because if the worst doesn't happen, then, you're prepared for much worse than you get and you do well. So that's just the way it kind of works. So that's what I always say. Be prepared for the worst. And when it doesn't happen, yay, maybe you saved a bit of extra money. Maybe you're just, you're one step ready to take advantage of the good times when they do roll back around. And Vic says, when you are too old to move back home. But how old is too old to move back home? I just want to put that out there. How old is too old, Vic? Just, well, I mean, obviously, if you don't, if you're at that point where your parents have passed, then that's probably too old. But nowadays, I mean, the way family works is I know if I had a child, let's say they were 40, holy banana bread, that would make me pretty old. But if I had a 40-year-old and I was like a senior sitting at home and they were in trouble, I wouldn't turn my back on them because that's kind of the way family is, right? You're supposed to be there for your family. So I honestly don't think it is too old because, and sometimes too, like I know when I moved back home before moving out to Ottawa, it wasn't so much about me. A lot of it was more of a mutual thing because my parents are older. So it was me helping them out while I was there and them helping me out, well, I wasn't even supposed to be there as long as I was, but then the pandemic had hit. So one of those interesting things, toilet paper. I don't know what you mean, but we'll go with it. Oh, are we talking about some of these prices and canned food? Oh, yeah, absolutely. I'm going to grab a sip here. Emergency savings, nope. And you know what? Vic brings up a good point. There are a lot of people who, they're at the point that they're struggling just to make their ends meet. Getting from one paycheck to the next paycheck takes everything. And sometimes it is hard. Sometimes you're in a situation where you can't set up an emergency fund. But in situations like that, you still have to try to do everything you can, even if it's a situation where if you have no resources, you're worried about your job. Well, then here's a thing to be doing. If you think there's a chance that your job is in danger in a recession, make sure your resume is up to date. Maybe even start throwing some feelers out. Little things to be prepared for whatever's going to happen. If you've got a backyard and you've got some good soil, maybe even start growing some stuff. There's a lot of different things that you can do in the world when things start going awry. But it's much, much easier if you do have the finances in place. There's no way around it. It's kind of just the way the world does work. So, in some cases, it's a situation where to get an emergency fund, you may have to pick up a side hustle, just to get some money in place so that you have that emergency money. As if you can find a side hustle. Sometimes it's difficult to find side hustles. And sometimes there's side hustles that you can pick up that takes forever for you to make any kind of money at. Let's take YouTube, for example. So for a YouTuber to get paid, first of all, you pretty much are going to be, your first year, you're not going to get paid a penny because you need to get 1,000 subscribers and 4,000 watch hours. And that's a pretty hard pill to take. And most people, it takes about a year. And then once you've gotten that, then you're at that point where you're going to make a tiny bit of money because YouTube will start trickling it in, because it all comes down to AdSense. So the way AdSense works is, YouTube keeps a bit of the ad money. You get a little bit of the ad money. So a lot of times you may be looking, you're like, oh, look, this video made $2. You're not rich, but it's one of those things. It does add up a lot. Now, Vic says, all right, most of our struggling, and I thought investing would give a leg up, but it would have been better to put it into a high interest savings account at 0.125. Heck, I'd have more money than having invested. That's, I guess the best way to say it this way is that money you put into investing right now, you're not going to get a return anytime soon. It's a situation where, you're basically investing for the future. So yes, right now, if you were to put money into a high interest account, maybe 1.2% or something like that, you're going to get a little bit of money back. You're going to have more money, a year from now than you have now. When it comes to investing, you put that money in, especially if you started investing back in January or the end of last year, you're in a situation where everything tanked. The entire market went down and went deep into the red. So you're going to look at your investments and it's going to be like, holy banana bread, where has all my money gone? Because it looks like it's gone. It's not gone unless you sell. I mean, if you sell while everything's deep in the red, yeah, your money is then gone. Simple as that. But that's the whole thing with investing, is you kind of have to ride out these red periods when things get better on the other side of the bear market, or you could now technically almost say the other side of the recession. Things will start to rebound. You will then have an opportunity at that point to be able to start making a bit more money. And, it's going to be a rough ride. It's not going to be an easy thing. And, what can you do? Now, Jill says, moving with your parents for a few months, you should be able to put together an emergency fund. Yeah, that is an option. The only problem with that right now is there's so many places where it's hard to find places to rent. And if you move in with your parents for a couple of months and then you try to move back, you could end up with a lot higher rent. So you want to be a little bit careful with that. So a lot of YouTubers have quit. I think there's always going to be a bit of a revolving door on YouTubers, especially Canadian finance channels have quit. And that does happen. What happens a lot of times is a lot of YouTubers, they love to talk when the times are great, because they can sit here and they're like, yeah, everything is great. Look at all the money we're making. And everybody's all happy. And, they're pulling up their following and, they're making money because people are doing the super chatting and they're subscribing to memberships and all of that fun stuff, which is a good way that YouTubers make money. But when things get tight, people are not super chatting. People are not subscribing to memberships. Your sponsorships are not as prominent as they could be. So yeah, it gets a little bit more tight, and you have to, you still have to continue to do your work. And sometimes it's tough. You go in and you say, okay, let's take a look at this stock today and see how badly it tanked. Because people sometimes don't want to be watching negative news. So I know my philosophy when it comes to it is I like to put a positive spin even on the bad stuff. It's like, even if I'm going to do a competition and just compete against a couple of stocks, and it's like, oh, okay, let's see which stock has fallen the least. At least have a little bit of fun with it and try to make things a little bit entertaining, and be kind of like, that voice that sort of floats through the recession and keeps people going. And there's still some good people, like, let's give you some good channels that are out there that are still pumping out videos pretty regularly. There's Brandon Beavis, of course. I think his channel is probably one of the biggest of the Canadian finance YouTubers. Now, Brandon has stepped away every so often, but he does come back. But his dad has now been helping. And his dad makes some really good videos. So there is that. There is also, let's see what else. There's a few others. Create, Save, Invest. He's out there. He makes some great his portfolio, and he's been branching out a bit more and doing live streams. So there are definitely some good channels out there. But yeah, there are some that you don't see as much anymore, and they're not, pumping out videos as much as they used to, or maybe they're not pumping out videos at all anymore. But a lot of them will probably come back when times get a little bit better. Up until then, hey, you guys have me. I'm not going anywhere. I will keep, no matter how bad the economy gets, I will keep ringing that bell for you guys. I'll guide you through to the other side, and then we'll all make some money together. That's the way I look at it. See, I remember Canada Savings Bond when I was a kid. Parents talk about the good old days of getting like 10% on those. Yes. Well, here's the thing. As these interest rates keep going higher and higher, bonds are becoming more of an option. Those interest rates, just start watching some of the interest rates on those bonds. If you find some that are making a good amount, you have to lock your money in a bit longer, but they're actually starting to look really good now, to be honest. That's me started peak market January 15th. Just keep DCing every month. It's all I can do. Yeah, absolutely. It is all you can do. And keep in money when it does come to investing, you should only be investing what you can afford to not. I don't want to say, everybody says, oh, only invest what you can afford to lose. Nobody can afford to lose anything, to be honest. But you want to invest money that you can afford to have it locked up for a while, because you're going to need to wait for the other side of that market to be making some money off of the stuff that you're buying today. So it's very important to do that. It's one of those situations where you don't put all your money in. Make sure you have enough money to meet your basic needs. Make sure you have enough money to deal with inflation, emergencies, all of that. So it is really, really, really important. Let's see here. And I tried a slightly different strategy of share cost averaging, where I bought some shares in an ETF, my version of DCA. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with buying. I love ETFs. Don't you quit. No, I'm not quitting, Vic. I am not going to quit at all. Where's Rye? I don't know where Rye is. He last I heard, he was working for his dad in Ottawa. I know he had a video a couple weeks ago, but I'm not sure what he is doing, to be honest. Brandon did have a baby, and that's one of those things. Let's see here. Adrian, passive income investing. Yeah, there are, like, perfect. I'm not familiar with Adrian's channel, but I should check it out. I do try, when I see, especially Canadian channels, I do try to check out as many as I can, because, I think of all of the Canadian financial YouTubers as kind of a family. So I think that's kind of one of those things. Apparently, I don't know about Adrian living in Panama with his 1 million portfolio. So it's not. So Adrian is not a Canadian. Okay. Adrian is legit. His style is unique. And I don't know anything about Adrian, so I'm not going to comment on Adrian, but that is okay. The U.S. Okay, so the 30-year Treasury bond was giving 9.25%. Well, at least until November. So, and that's fantastic. And that is some opportunity there. You'll probably make more long-term if you're investing in some solid blue chip stocks, but you got to wait. That's the whole thing. Whereas the nice thing about the bonds is that once you purchase one, it's almost like it is a contract. So you're going to get your money back. So that's not a bad thing. Hello, Professor Candace. Why, hello there, Dimitri. Thumbs up, done. Absolutely. So make sure, everybody, just click on that like button if you haven't done it yet. It does help the algorithm and send this out to everybody out there, which is fantastic. Hello, friends and family in the chat. And we got Scott. Hello. Finally made it to a live stream. Now, here's an interesting thing about Scott. Me and Scott are going to do a live stream together over on his channel, and we're going to talk about YouTube. So anybody who's interested in starting a YouTube channel and you want to know all about the algorithm and all the YouTube secrets, you're going to want to check this out. So once we get this ironed out, I'll let you guys all know, and, Scott will let his folks know, and we'll slam out a really fantastic video on YouTube, or live stream over there on Scott's channel. So, and check out Scott. Scott's a good guy. I love his channel. He's a really, really nice guy, and definitely worth checking out. And of course, Dimitri, another one of my favorites, Mountain of Inspiration. He has a great channel too. He has a lot of historical context to teach some very good fundamental values that really, really can help you in life and business. So that's what's kind of cool. And he's watching in the background. Scott, where's your background video? Yeah, Scott has some nice background videos. He actually had a fireplace earlier in the week, and I was really enjoying it. And then the live stream started, and I was slightly disappointed at first because I was just into that fireplace. Adrian is from Thornhill, but now in Panama. Okay, that's cool. And Jill's saying hey to Scott. Scott saying hey to Jill. And then there's a big yes. And now, oh, okay. Scott, I got everyone I know, including my exes, to subscribe to get you over 1K to get that background video. Oh, that background. He wants to know about your past, Scott. So that's, I remember Vic, when we were both approaching it, I was getting the same thing from my good buddy Vic. You know, tell us about your past. And Scott says, maybe I should run the fireplace 24/7. Well, you know, if you do it on Christmas Day, I will absolutely watch it. I may not be watch it, but I'll keep it running all day long. You'll get a good 12 hours of watch time from me. Easily. I love them fireplace ones. So that is kind of cool. Stay home. Absolutely. All right. So I got some supply chain news, by the way. So here's the good news when it comes to the supply chain news. So right now, if you remember all of the congestion in our ports, well, according to Sea Intelligence, they're a group that reports on stuff like this, about 50% of that congestion is now gone. So we're only half as congested as we used to be, which is fantastic. And they're predicting that by March, the ports should be completely back to normal. So no more congestion at all, which will be really good for the supply chain. Now, there are still dangers. Obviously, with the whole oil prices, if oil really, really gets out of whack, that could impact the supply chain a bit more. But at least these ships are starting to get their ship in order. Oh, that was bad. That was Tim Danter level of bad. But Vic says, I'm here because Candace offers something of value and the life experience and formal education contributes. I try to, you know what, that's the thing. If I didn't offer something of value, I think most of you aren't going to be here, which makes a lot of sense. So that's my goal. My goal here, and this, I guess my motto of the channel is to provide some good value, to provide you a little bit of entertainment, because, you know, I try to be, I don't want to say wacky, but I try to be memorable in my presentation and the way I bring across information, and, you know, I bring a little bit of playfulness. And I'll tell you why I do that. It's really, really interesting. Somebody once told me about this. If you're driving along, so you're driving in your car, and you drive by a field, just a big open field, and you take a glance at that field, well, you know what? About 10 minutes later, you're not going to remember that field. No, it's just gone because it's nothing. Nothing happened special. But now drive by that same field, and you take your glance, and there's some naked dude running across the field. Holy banana bread. You're never going to forget that field. You'll be like 88 years old sitting on a rocking chair, and you'll be telling people around you about that guy who ran across that field naked out in the middle of nowhere. And that's kind of why, because when you create something interesting, when you make it a little bit different, so when you add a little bit of pizzazz to it, it makes it more memorable, and it makes it easier to, you know, to grasp the information and to remember the information and all of that fun stuff. Because let's face it, you guys all have been in the finance area for a while, and finance is really dry. You know, it's kind of one of them boring topics. I mean, I know when I was a kid, there was jokes about things like accounting and finance and how you could use one of those books to help you fall asleep at night, because that's how dry the material tends to be. So I try not to do it that way. I try to come about in a more fresh invigorating, more interesting way, because that's kind of the whole thing. So that's what I like. Now Vic says, I don't know anything about Scott. Something about cameras. You know what? I'm interested in watching a background video on Scott too. I don't know a lot about him. I just know I like his channel. I like the way he presents his information. I find it's almost like watching Bob Ross, because he's got that little calmness to him. So he's like Bob Ross, and I would be more like Bob Ross, who stuck a fork in an electrical socket. Just because I'm kind of jacked up that way. But I'll never look at banana bread the same way. Yeah, absolutely. Anybody who's been following this channel, and has heard me say holy banana bread more times than you can think about. Every time you see banana bread, you're going to be like, you'll think about this channel. There's no way around it. And here's that funny thing. One of these days, you're going to just be out in the middle of nowhere. Well, maybe not the middle of nowhere, but you're going to be just out somewhere, and, maybe you'll see something that happens, and you're just going to all of a sudden say, holy banana bread. And you might go dope after it because, it's like, oh, I can't believe it. But it does happen. So there we go. There, Scott, do one for Candace. You can't say no to such a pretty lady. There you go, Scott. You got no choice now. Both Vic and myself are saying, do a background video. Let's find out about it. We'll do it in one of your live streams. Just make it take like a 15-minute segment in a live stream and just say, hey, this is who I am. This is what I'm about. This is what, and that way there, Vic will be happy. I'll be happy, and people will get to know you a little bit better. Okay. Now here's an interesting thing too. I guess I'm flying all over the place, but I'm just getting the last couple of news stories out of the way. So jobs. Now, the Bank of America actually made a pretty dire prediction in the U.S. They're saying that the way that rate hikes are continuing and this fight against inflation, they're actually expecting that next year in 2023, that you're going to be losing 175,000 jobs every month. As long as we keep doing it down, while keep, fighting inflation. And we have to fight inflation. We kind of have to. I mean, it's one of these things that we almost need the recession to get out of the whole mess with inflation, the whole mess from all of the money printing and all of that fun stuff. So what can we do? And the very last thing about recession is the Royal Bank of Canada had a report that came out this week, and they are once again, they're ringing the recession bells. And they're saying early 2023, they're expecting Canada to slip into a recession. Now, they're thinking it's not going to be that bad, but it's hard to say. It'll be interesting. I mean, most of these things, we won't really know how bad something's going to be until we're through it. And in many ways, almost all of 2022, people have been feeling that pain, almost recession-like pain, as things have just been not going great through this year. So it is kind of interesting. And now Hockey Nut down here says, and this is interesting. He says the American dollar is almost too strong. That is true. The amount of people getting into commodity trading now, or not commodity, sorry, Forex and, buying bills and just buying money is actually getting pretty high. So, and that American bill, as long as the American dollar keeps on going up, because you got to remember, everything priced in the American dollar. So things priced to the American dollar, oil, Bitcoin, those are two right off the top of my head. As the American dollar goes up, it drives those prices down. So even though you may be thinking, okay, well, oil's really, really fallen. Well, no, it's not that oil has fallen that much. It's that the price of the American dollar has risen that much and makes all of the things priced in the American dollar appear like they've lost a lot of value, that they haven't lost as much as you actually think they did. So it's kind of interesting. Now, Pascal says, I'm thinking of starting a small YouTube channel geared towards younger investors, 18 to 26. Do you have any tips? Love your videos. Keep up the good work, Candace. All right. Lots of tips, Pascal. One of the first tips is that when you start a YouTube channel, you kind of can't go into it thinking I'm going to make a perfect channel. I'm going to make perfect videos, because you're not. It is a learning curve. Some people will say your first 100 videos are you training. You know, you've got the training wheels on for the first 100 videos. After that, then you start to, and it's kind of like this. When I look back at my first video, at video number 1, I'm like, oh my God, did that ever suck? You know, and I'm going to be a harsher critic, because as I've been learning, you know, I've learned how to do a lot of different things. I mean, when I first started, I was using a MacBook Pro, and that's it. I was using the webcam on it. I was using, you know, the speakers on it. They weren't that great. So there's a couple of video, like my Christmas video for last year. Holy banana bread. That's a little bit blurry. There's a part of me that just wants to delete that video and make a better one. And I'll make a Christmas video again this year. So it's one of those things. So keep your expectations low. If you heard of Think Media, they're a YouTube channel for helping people learn about YouTube. Their motto is just hit record. And that's kind of what you have to do. Hit record, you know, head on, just make the videos and create a goal that every video will be 1% better than the last video. You know, learn how to do things as you go. Learn how to do everything from green screen to editing. Learn how to edit out your breaths and everything. There's just a lot to the whole process. And when me and Scott do that channel on YouTube, watch that, because that's going to give you, I think, a whole lot of tips in there. The other thing too, Pascal, especially when it comes to the finance stuff, I think you have a general idea on what you want to do. Utilize me as much as you want. I'll help. I'll help you to the best of my ability. You know, ask questions or ask for advice. Once your channel's up and running, I'll even throw a couple promotes up there for you as well, just to, you know, help you get off the ground. Because as I said earlier, I think Canadian financial YouTubers, we're all a big family, and I like to treat it that way, because, you know, I look at it this way here. When it comes to collaborations, some people will approach collaborations and say, what am I going to get out of this collaboration? I don't do it that way. I am more or less, oh, that collaboration sounds fun. I'm going to do it. And in some cases, it might be that the other person is going to get much more out of it than I am, but that's not what I'm doing it for, right? I'm doing it because I want to help. I want to create a strong Canadian financial YouTube community. And that includes every YouTuber that's out there in Canada who does finance. I'd love to see more of us have a stronger representation compared to the American communities. All right, so yes, it does need to come down. Just do it, Pascal. Absolutely. It's because the UK pound is crashing. Yeah, that has a big thing about it. There's a lot of stuff that's going on with of course, the UK pound. And as Vince said, many UK pensions were leveraged and almost went under. Let's see. Yeah, leverage is dangerous. How much leverage in Canada, US pension funds? Good question. Good question. I don't know how much is there, but it is something to think about. Maybe even that could even be a future video. First videos are always terrible. Yeah. I mean, I don't even have a thumbnail for my for my first video, and I could go back and add a thumbnail. Well, I have a thumbnail. It's just a picture from the video, but I'm not going to do it because it is my first video, and I just want to leave it the way it was. So that way there, anytime I want to, if I'm ever having a day where I'm like, oh, I just don't feel like I'm growing fast enough. Well, I can then go back and watch that first video and say, holy banana bread. Yeah, you've grown. So that's kind of the way I look at that. And see, yeah, your first videos were bad, but you're definitely getting better. Thanks. Yeah, absolutely. And that's the thing. When are you and Scott doing that live stream? Well, we haven't figured that out yet. Scott threw the idea out. I said, yeah, let's do it. We don't have a date yet, but don't worry. I will let you guys know when we do have a date. Do you think you will ever interview fund managers? Maybe. I've done a couple of interviews, but they've been, you know, more or less side hustle type people. Like I've interviewed a professional Twitch person, and I've interviewed Frankie McDonald, the weather guy. But yeah, I wouldn't mind doing an interview with a fund manager. That is something that could be interesting. And I wouldn't mind, like I'm starting to think about sponsorships, and there's definitely some ETF companies that I would be okay with being sponsored with, because when I do accept a sponsorship, when I get something, it has to be something I believe in, because I am not going to peddle, some company or some stock to you guys that I don't believe in. If I'm not willing to buy it and go all in on that company, I am not going to peddle it to you guys to make you guys think maybe it's a better company than it is. That will never happen on this channel. Thank you so much. I love your content. I find it really great. Thank you. Canadian too, by the way. Yes, absolutely. Gotta love the Canadians. No date. No date. That's Scott. All right. Afraid of committing. Oh dear. No, I mean, I'll talk to Scott. We'll figure it out. I'm open to, hey, whenever I would, I assume this is going to be something that will probably happen before winter. So definitely within the fall, and we're in the fall now. So, but I can't answer for Scott because we have to sort of hammer that out. But I think that will be a fun little video. Maybe we'll bring Scott over here too and have him do something. But we have not even broached that with Scott. So, and you see, here we go. Whenever we just have to set it up. So there we go. So what I will do is one of these days this week, Scott normally does a 1 hour live stream in the morning before he starts. Well, he doesn't, I was going to say go to work, but he works at home. But before he starts work, I'll jump into one of those and just, I'll jump into the chat and, we'll figure it out. We'll get it nailed down this week, and then we'll know when we're going to do it. So that would be kind of cool. Because, yeah, I'm looking forward to that. I think that would be a lot of fun. There's such a refreshing no filter straight talk. Yeah, absolutely. I'm one of these people. I have no filter. It's like whatever pops into my head, it's coming out. It's just the way it is. But that's kind of one of the cool things. And I'll give you guys the straight up on stuff. It's like, it's one of those things like, if you remember last year in crypto, a lot of these really, really, really crap coins used to get so many YouTubers who would be promoting them like crazy. And it's like, dear banana bread, that's a horrible coin. How can they be promoting them? And they were promoting them because they're being paid to. But I'm not going to do that. It's just not something I will do. I can't believe this channel hasn't exploded. Well, I can't believe that either. I want it to explode. But it takes time. It does take time to grow. And we've been growing. It's only been a couple of weeks since we hit 1,000, and we're already another 50 on top of that. So, it keeps on growing. It's one of those things. And I look at it this way. As long as I continue to see growth, I'm happy on that front. I don't need the channel I don't need to have like 100,000 followers or subs tomorrow. I just need to keep doing what I'm doing, make sure that I'm providing you guys with great content, and and engage with you guys as much as I can, because I try to engage with the community as absolute much time as I can. Any more requests for day trader videos for beginners? There's a good amount of requests for that, Hockey Nut. I am going to do another day trading video soon, probably sooner than later. It'll be a Saturday video. I will tell you that right now. I don't know. It probably won't be this Saturday, because I think I got one thing I already planned for this Saturday. I had a request for a dividend type, basically more of a tutorial on dividends. But I think it's going to be the following Saturday. So look for that probably in 2 weeks, right towards the end of the month. All right. We still need more gals with channels. Absolutely. The ladies just seem to be more level-headed. Yeah, it's a lot of cases. So it's one of those things I don't even think it really matters about gender. It's like, as long as somebody comes on, they're passionate about their, about the information they're providing, and they're not pulling the rug over your head. Like, it's like, I'm going to make mistakes. I know that. And I'm totally okay with it, and hopefully when I do make mistakes, you guys call me out, because, otherwise I'm not going to learn at the same time. But no, I do love the community. I love this community. I love the way this is all put together. So now we're coming into the end of this live stream. So I want you guys, if you guys got questions, hit them right now. That's your way of making the live stream go longer, right? Is distract me. Distract me with questions, and I can go pretty far beyond where I'm supposed to be going. Because that's the thing. The 1 hour, like, just to give you an idea, the whole 1 hour format is that I don't want to get to a point where I run out of things to be talking about. I have enough content that I bring in with me that will support me for an hour, with, of course, questions and wherever the chat goes. But then from that point on, it's up to you guys. You guys throw stuff at me. We keep a conversation going. We go longer. It's as simple as that. Now, I'm probably not as, like, I went to see Clerks 3 the other night, and Kevin Smith was there. So he was, doing a Q&A at the end of it. And holy banana bread, that guy can talk for a long time. I think he easily went a half an hour beyond what he was supposed to. So that's kind of an interesting thing. Have a good night, and thanks. Yep, that one, to be honest and say something when you are off. Yeah, absolutely. Yes, but they are saying job losses will be mostly white collar. Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see. Like, I think the recession isn't going to treat people the same. I think there's going to be a lot of low, sort of your, I don't know if you call it blue collar, but there's going to be a lot of the cheaper jobs. You're going to see more of the middle type jobs that are going to disappear first. And that'll be very interesting to see how that goes. I don't think we're going to have a very even recession when that happens. And we will talk a lot more about recession as time goes by, because there's a lot to say. And I think there's a lot to see as it actually starts shaking out. And it's kind of funny. Like, I know a recession is bad and it sucks, but we do absolutely have to have a recession, because it's just kind of it's part of the economic cycle. But then there's that part of me too. And I think that's the scientist part that's like, this should be fascinating to watch. I hate to see, though, I hate the fact that it's going to affect a lot of people here. It's going to affect a lot of the community. It's going to affect a lot of my family. It's going to be tight. Things are going to be tight for a lot of people. And I don't like to see that. I would rather see some of the good times. And that's a beautiful thing. Because, guys, when we get to the end of the recession, when we get on the other side, and we're all meeting here and we're having, the markets are green and, everybody's making money, we'll be able to celebrate that all together. And I think that's going to be fantastic. And I think that's a beautiful note to sort of end this on today. So you guys have a great rest of your day. If it's not too cold, maybe have a barbecue, or, just don't worry about the cow tax. That's only in New Zealand. So we're all fine and dandy. Anyway, fantastic time. Love having you guys here. We'll see you again next week. And we'll also start to look at, one of the things I want to look at what I'm going to do over the holidays this year. I want to do something special. Last year I did a bunch of extra videos, but we'll look at doing something this year. Probably not as intense as last year, because last year was more of a growth spurt. But anyway, fantastic. Thank you guys all for being here. I will see you guys next week. Take care. Have a great week. Hopefully it'll be a green week. You never know.